Welcome to the Andrew Holland Podcast, where we talk about business, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. Now, here's your host, Andrew Holland.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Andrew Holland Podcast, where we talk about business, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. I'm your host, Andrew Holland. As a business owner and entrepreneur who started and sold multiple companies, as well as being a CPA that's worked in the corporate world, I started this podcast to be the ultimate support group for entrepreneurs and business owners. So, whether you're just starting your journey or you've been navigating the challenging waters of running and owning a business for many years, this podcast is intended to be your weekly go to source for inspiration, guidance, and valuable insights. Together, through interviews, monologues, and other relevant formats that we explore throughout the podcast, we look to understand the stories of successful entrepreneurs, dive deep into the practical business strategies that can be used, and discuss everything in between so we can learn, understand, and be successful in the world of business together. And ultimately, I started this because there have been points in time in my entrepreneurial endeavors that I felt alone, but none of us have to feel alone. So please help me grow our support group by following and liking us on your favorite podcast outlet. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, the Andrew Holland Podcast, so you'll get the weekly updates when we post the video version every Wednesday. And of course, follow me on Twitter and Threads. My Twitter handle and thread handle is A Holland Podcast. That's A Holland Podcast, where we have conversations about the podcast from that week and all sorts of other business conversations throughout the week. And of course, be sure to listen or watch every week and share with all your friends, your family, and your colleagues. And as we grow this support group together, I think none of us will ever have to have that feeling as entrepreneurs, business owners, working to accomplish the goal of growing a business of feeling alone. Remember, we often talk about financial and legal concepts, but don't take anything you hear from this podcast or any other podcast for that matter as the absolute gospel truth. Be sure you're always consulting the appropriate professionals for your situation in your area. Now, recently, I stumbled across something that I thought was so important or well worth sharing that it's going to be the topic of today's podcast. And that is wisdom that we can get from our seniors, from those who have experienced life for 90 years or more. And I can't take credit for all of these questions, but Sahil Bloom, a fellow entrepreneur, investor, and creator that I follow on Twitter, turned 32 earlier this year. And he did something that I thought was very profound or wise. And he went around recognizing that at 32 years old, there's a lot you don't know about life. And so he went and interviewed multiple 90-year-olds and asked them if you had the option, if you had the option to talk to your younger 32-year-old self, what would you tell yourself? We've talked about in a lot of podcasts having a mentor, and I have multiple mentors in my life. And the funny thing is, the majority of my mentors are many years my senior. I have mentors in the late 60s, mid 70s, and even in the 80s. And they are gracious enough, I meet with them periodically throughout the year, to just sit there and listen to the wisdom that they have. And they're all entrepreneurs, and they have done so many things in life because of how long they've been on this earth. And just having the benefit of being able to sit there and listen to what they've learned, I think is something that we don't do frequently enough throughout the various stages of our lives. So I want to share the 40 different words of advice that Sahil got from these different 90-year-olds, 90 years or older, that he interviewed. And then we'll talk about some of them in more depth. Some of them we'll go through pretty quickly. But I think this is so crucial to being a successful entrepreneur. Sometimes we get so involved in the hustle and bustle of growing our business or surrounding ourselves with people that we see every day. And we forget to break outside of our comfort zone and ask people who are from different walks of life, regardless of whether they go into business or not, but have experienced so many things professionally and personally just by the very nature of having lived for over 90 years. And that's why I thought this was so important. I think some of these things are very profound. Of course, some of them I'm not even old enough really to understand. I can hear the words, but I can't really internalize them. And for those of you listeners who are perhaps older than I am, perhaps many years my senior, or even 90 years or older, you'll probably get a lot more meaning or better be able to understand internally what they're saying. But this is such an opportunity for us to see what we can learn from these individuals. So let's start with number one. Now and then break out the fancy china and drink the good wine for no reason at all. I love this one because, and it's particularly important for me, it really goes to the heart of just enjoy the simple things. You don't need a reason to celebrate with your family, with your friends, with your colleagues, with your employees, with your fellow business partners. Just do things at random and enjoy life and enjoy, more importantly, the simple things and the things that you have been given. I'm as guilty of this as anybody. I think I love working, and sometimes I get so caught up that I forget to slow down, sit back, appreciate all the blessings that I've been given between my family and faith and my colleagues. And this says or really speaks to that. Slow down, celebrate, and be thankful for the blessings that you've given at any point. You don't need a special occasion to do that. The second one, and we're going to breeze through, there's 40 of them, so we're going to breeze through some of these pretty quickly and we'll spend a little bit more time on other ones. But all of these have certain meanings to me. And I think you, as a listener, will have various experiences in your lives where some of these will be incredibly meaningful to you. Some of the other ones may be less meaningful, but that's the joy of talking to multiple people that are 90 years older, 90 years or older, because they out of all of this feedback, there's certainly something there for everybody. Number two, dance at weddings until your feet are sore. I think this is very similar to number one. Enjoy yourself, have fun at the special occasions, and don't be too serious. Don't be too serious of yourself. In this day and age, sometimes, and I'm sure we've all met people that are always so serious and forget, you know what? Life is only so long. Uh, you don't need to be a stick in the mud all the time. You can relax and try to enjoy things. And weddings can be very enjoyable. So dance until you can't dance anymore, till your feet are sore. And I think that's what this is getting at. Number three, and this is one I think that is so important, whether it's a relationship, a personal relationship, or a professional relationship. This one is obviously talking more about a personal relationship, but I think it's just as important with a business relationship, a business partner, your employees, your colleagues. Tell your partner you love them every night before falling asleep. That can be every day at work. It can be whoever this applies to. Someday you'll find the other side of the bed empty and you wish you could. That one is incredibly meaningful to me. I think for anybody that's lost someone, and we've all lost, that's part of life, is the pain of losing someone. Again, this one specifically talking about a personal relationship, but I think it's applicable to so many different relationships. You never know when the other side of the bed might be empty, so don't take those relationships for granted. Number four, don't fear sadness, as it tends to sit right next to love. This one I like because it is so true. Oftentimes, and I'm sure you've experienced this before, things are going really smoothly. And let's sit to the professional side here. I think this can apply to both personally and professionally, but let's talk about the professional side. Things are going really smoothly in the business and you forget to appreciate the simple things. And then something happens that makes your life incredibly challenging. Perhaps it's very emotional and touches close to the heart. In this scenario, it says, don't fear sadness, as it tends to sit right next to love. And it's only in those moments of sadness or in those moments of challenges where we can really appreciate the moments of love or the moments of, in business, success. And imagine if your whole life was an easy ball game. We often need to lose something before we can really appreciate it. And that's what this goes to. And again, this is focusing on a personal relationship, but this is so applicable throughout so many facets of life. There are going to be challenges. There are going to be struggles in business. And all of those of you who have embarked on being an entrepreneur or growing a business, you've certainly experienced that. I've experienced that a ton, and I'm going to continue to experience it. But experience does show that you can only appreciate the good things and the high points when and because you have points of sadness or challenges or problems. And so we should be thankful when we fail, or we should be thankful when things aren't so easy, because otherwise, the times when we're successful, the times when we're happy wouldn't be nearly as meaningful. And I love that reminder because it's so easy for us to forget. And we always want things to be easy, or that's kind of a natural propensity of we don't want conflict or problems. But we should be praying for those because, I'm a man of faith, and certainly from a biblical perspective, it keeps us on the straight and narrow. From a secular perspective, just human nature, we appreciate that which we have been given more when we are close to losing it or when we have struggles to keep it. Number 5, treat your body like a house you have to live in for another 70 years. Treat your body like a house that you have to live in for another 70 years. This is often forgotten in the sense that as business owners, a lot of times we don't make time for being healthy. We're so busy working 14, 16, 18 hours a day, and we're focused on growing that business, which is fantastic. And growing a business, being an entrepreneur is hard. But don't forget, you can only continue to be around for your business partners, for your employees, if you take care of your body. Because if you don't, it's your house that you have to live in. And if you don't take care of your house and you have to live in it for 70 years, it's not going to be around for 70 years. And that's a good reminder. I am as guilty of this, a lot of these, as anybody. Sometimes I forget to eat healthy or take the time to drink enough water, if it's as simple as that, or work out, spend time to relax, decompress, stress relief. That's so important. And if you talk to any successful entrepreneur, this is one that's easily forgotten. But those who tend to be the most successful and accomplish the goals that they set out to accomplish, whether short term, mid-term, or long term goals, understand the importance of this particular one. Your body is a house you have to live in for 70 years. Act like it. Number 6, never raise your voice except for at a ball game. Boy, this is one that's really hard, especially for those who are closest to us. We often treat those closest to us the worst. We're more comfortable yelling at them or getting frustrated or letting our tempers show. And we all have different personalities and strengths and weaknesses. Some of us have shorter wicks than others. But this is a good reminder, even in the most stressful situations, whether someone made a mistake or perhaps you made a mistake and you're frustrated about it, uh, never raise your voice. It doesn't do anything good. That should be reserved for a ball game. And this goes to something we've talked a lot on this podcast about: emotional intelligence. Being able to control your demeanor, your manner, your temper, uh, the pitch or tone of your voice. The more you can control that and recognize that the only time you really should have to do that is at a ball game, I think you'll find a lot more uh, success, and you'll also gain a lot more respect from those around you. Because again, as a business owner, people are always watching you, whether you realize it or not, and how you compose yourself in the most challenging situations are the times when your team, when your employees, when your colleagues, when your business partners are going to remember the most. And so don't forget that. Number 7, do one good deed every single day, but never tell anyone about it. This is such a biblical concept, and a lot of these are. And that's what I love about it. You can do a lot of treat others as you would like to be treated, but don't go around bragging about it. That's not the point. Uh, we are all humans, and we all should treat each other with love and respect. As God tells us, treat others as you would like to be treated, love your neighbor as yourself. This goes to the heart of that, but you don't need to go around bragging about it. It should just be something that you do, and it's second nature. I know that struggle as a challenge for all of us as humans, but you don't need to toot your own horn. And in our society, Again, a lot of type A personalities, they make sure that everybody hears when they do something good. And those people who need to do that are often showing signs of insecurity. And you don't want to be that person. Number 8, time doesn't heal anything when it comes to relationships. Don't delay difficult conversations. Boy, having many business partners and sometimes with employees, whether you need to fire them or you need to relay a tough message, I have learned this the hard way. Uh, Time doesn't heal anything when it comes to relationships. Don't delay difficult conversations. If there's an elephant or a gorilla in the room, don't let it stay there for too long. Confront the problem, approach the situation as soon as you can, as soon as it makes sense. Don't just continue to delay it because problems don't go away. They only tend to get worse with delays. And that's true personally, professionally, across the board. And I love that so many of the people who have lived so many years in this life uh, remind us of this because it's easy to forget and it's easy to want to shy away from problems. And I've talked about this a lot in this day and age, the 21st century of technology. It's easy to hide behind the phone as opposed to setting up a meeting to talk to someone face to face or giving them even a phone call. People want to try to get out of conflicts through text, and that's the coward's way out. It's just not the you're not going to get the meaningful result that you can. And again, I think you'll be a lot more respected if you approach the people that need to be approached with difficult conversations in a respectful and a responsible manner, face to face, not hiding behind a screen so that it's easier for you. Number 9, find the things that make your eyes light up. Do more of those. I love this. For me, this means a lot because, as I said earlier, I love working. I'm a workaholic, but I enjoy it. And I haven't done enough of this in my life, spending time with family, doing hobbies, because those are the memories those are the times you're going to remember. This one is a great reminder of that. And I've talked about this recently, took up the hobby of scuba diving with my brother and sister in law and nieces and nephews. It's been fantastic. And this is one of those scenarios where it makes all of our eyes light up, and we're trying to do more of that. And the funny thing is those who are working to grow a business, typically, once they internalize this and practice this, uh, do things that make your eyes light up, often hobbies or areas of stress relief, they're more efficient in business. They make better decisions, whether it's exercising, it's a combination of things. And that's why this is so applicable to all of us starting or growing businesses, because the more you can, not that you have 5 hours every single day, but you need to build in time for things that excite you, passion projects outside of your business, and it'll help you be more efficient and successful in your business. Number 10, always remind yourself that your track record for making it through your bad days is perfect. I think that what this one means, and for those of you listening, if you can share some advice or wisdom on this, I might just be too young and immature to understand exactly what this means. But if you make it through a bad day, you've won and you've gotten to the next day. I think every day is a new day. So you've made it through all of your bad days, and that means your track record is perfect. And that's something to hold on to. When you can get through challenges or conflicts, there's always going to be a new day. And if you're looking at or keeping score for your track record on how you've handled bad days, as long as you made it through to the next day, uh, you've got a perfect track record. Number 11, if something has a minor issue, repair it. Minor issues become major issues over time. This applies equally to love, friendships, health, and home. We've talked about this kind of in an early one. Problems don't go away, even minor problems, they just get bigger. And as they talked about, whether it's your home, personal relationships, professional relationships, something going on in other facet of your life, don't try to prevent from dealing with it because it'll only get bigger. Confront the situation as soon as you can. Don't delay it. Number 12, the most demeaning lie you can tell is the lie to yourself, or the most hurtful. They use a different word. I tend to stay away from it. The most hurtful lie you can tell is the lie you tell yourself. So true. And we all lie to ourselves. And this is one all of us struggle with. And if anybody says they've never lied to themselves, they're lying to themselves because it's human. A lot of times we don't want to face or acknowledge some of the problems that we have or the issues we have. And this is why our previous episode was on core competencies. We all have strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes it's hard for us to see our own weaknesses. Ask the people around you. Ask the people around you, is there something that I'm not seeing or that I'm lying to myself about because I want to know? And if you have the wherewithal or the mental fortitude or emotional intelligence to do this, you can start improving on that particular, we'll say lie, but let's say weakness that maybe you're telling yourself. And this one's not easy. It's not easy for any of us, but it's one that we're all constantly working on. And I think this is one of the ones for me that's at the top of the list of all of these 40 because it's so prevalent everywhere. And it's such a struggle for all of us. Number 13, no one has ever argued their way to happiness. It's a great point. You can argue and argue. And again, for those of you who have additional feedback on what this means to you or scenarios that make it meaningful to you, this one's a little bit perplexing to me, but I think it means you can't get to happiness just by talking or arguing your way there. You have to make it a priority and you have to actually take the actions that result in happiness, whatever that means. And again, uh, for me as a man of faith, a lot of these have much more meaning through the sphere of biblical references and spirituality and the meaning of life and what real happiness is, not fake happiness. But from a secular perspective, happiness is different to everybody. And I think nobody can tell you what your happiness is, if you will. And so you can't argue your way there. Number 14, if you're going to lose a fight, make sure the other person thinks twice before fighting you again. This one I disagree with a bit. Again, coming from a biblical perspective, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. I'm not a big fan of ever talking about fighting. But so this one, if you're going to lose a fight, make sure the other person thinks twice before fighting you again. I guess the most relevant experience that I've had with this, sometimes people come at you and they're in the wrong. And you don't, especially in business, and let's keep it to the business side, you don't want it you don't want it to seem like you're just going to push over. Perfect example, when Jeff and I were in the business, someone came after us legally for a contract that we had signed, but they didn't obligate any side of their contract. It was for buying a garbage truck. They ended up suing us, and it was really a lose-lose situation. They were a behemoth. We were much smaller. They had the money to push us around before the judge ultimately made the final decision because it was a civil case, so there wasn't a jury in this particular instance. They said over a settlement offer, our lawyer said, you probably have an 80% chance of winning this, but you're going to spend another 40, 50,000. And do you want to take that risk? We took the settlement offer, but we did it in such a way that they weren't going to come after us a second time. I think they just saw us as a tiny speck, and they realized that we may be a lot smaller than they, and they may have much bigger pockets, but think a second time before you come after us with a frivolous lawsuit. And so that's the best way that I can approach this particular one in the professional side of things. Number 15, getting old is no picnic, but it's much better than the alternative. I love to ask people that are older than I am, if you had the chance to be my age or go back, would you? And I don't think I've ever heard a yes. And that is really profound because getting old isn't easy. And again, I'm 36 years old, and it's so different than at 20 and 25 and 30. But with age comes wisdom. And when I look back, I wouldn't ever want to go back either because there are three things you can't buy in life: time, love, and experience. And of course, salvation, which is the most important. So, four things, but secularly speaking, time, love, and experience. And a lot of those things only come with age. And so this one is really interesting, especially as technology and AI and all the scary things that can bring forth. I think that also brings a whole other meaning to this one. Getting old is no picnic, but it's much better than the alternative, which of course the alternative being getting younger. Of course, the movie Benjamin Button. Number 16, you may occasionally disappoint others, but make sure to never disappoint yourself. Love to hear feedback from you as listeners on what this means to you. This one is not perplexing, but I would rather disappoint myself than others because I think others are more important than ourselves. I don't think this, of course, is by any means indicating to be selfish, but I think we typically set the standard highest for ourselves, and that's what it means. If you've disappointed others, it's high chance that you've disappointed yourself. And so, if that is the meaning that's the meaning I take from this, again, share your thoughts on this and stories that you have, or maybe if you think I'm missing the mark on this one, don't disappoint yourself because you have a high bar, and that likely means you disappoint others. Number 17, never let a good friendship atrophy. Send the text, make the call, plan the trip. Good friendships must be treasured. I love this one because I'm not very good at this. I'm so busy and I've had a lot of friends who are meaningful to me throughout my life, even family members, but I've never been that individual that's great at keeping up and checking in. And so when other friends do this, I actually had a friend reach out a couple weeks ago who I hadn't talked to in a number of years, quite frankly, and I was so thankful he did. And I felt a little ashamed that I hadn't done it, but we reconnected and it was great, and it's a friendship that I'd love to have my entire life, but you've got to foster friendships, don't let them atrophy. And this is just as important just for not only friendships but relationships, business partners, etc. Good business partners, I should say. There's some business partners that perhaps you don't want to continue that relationship. Number 18, when you meet someone, look them in the eye, give them a firm handshake, and call them by their name. For all of you that are 30 and younger, please put this at the top of your list. Technology has become such a detriment to those who have grown up on this. They forget that we're all humans and business is all about humans interacting. When you have the opportunity to meet someone, whether personally, professionally, just for fun, look them in the eye, give them a firm handshake, and call them by their name. I can't tell you how far that goes to making an incredible first impression and to building a foundation for a very successful relationship, regardless of the type of relationship we're talking about. And in this day and age, because we've all gotten so comfortable hiding behind our screen, this one is so often forgotten. Just being able to look people in the eyes is becoming a thing of the past. Don't let that happen to you. I promise you that if you practice this with every relationship you have, again, personally or professionally, you will be remembered. You will gain the other person's respect, and it will be or have the opportunity to be a meaningful relationship if you want it to. And you, whether it's employees, business partners, don't forget when you meet someone, look them in the eye, give them a firm handshake, and call them by their name. For those of you who are 45, 50, 60, you're probably thinking, yeah, obviously. And, I thankfully had fantastic parents that raised me this way. And I just enjoy doing this because meeting someone eye to eye, greeting them with a handshake and calling them by their name. I know when people do it to me, subconsciously, it's a tremendous feeling. It's the same for other people. And it's goes a long way. Don't forget it. And it's so easy to do. Number 19, give everybody a second chance, but never a third. I love this one. We all make mistakes. We all fall down. Forgiveness is so huge. But if it happens time and time again, that relationship is important. That person doesn't care enough about you. Again, I'm personalizing this. The business partner doesn't care. The employee doesn't care. Give everybody a second chance, but never a third. And one of the things that it took me a long time to learn is, and this is as it relates to employees, I tend to want to give them the benefit of the doubt, not just employees, but generally everybody. I try to see the good or the decency in people. And often people will take advantage of that. And so sometimes you have to learn in business, speak softly, but carry a big stick. And I think this one points very well to that one. Number 20, the good old days are always happening right now. Live in the moment. We always are thinking about the future. I'm particularly prone of this, of where I want the business to go at this time and, financially where I want to be. Don't forget to live in today because you don't know about tomorrow, and the good old days that are always referred to are right now. Enjoy the simple things. And this reiterates or goes back to one of the earlier ones. They're very interconnected. And it's so easy in this day and age, especially when you're running at 100 miles an hour, as so many business owners are, to remember to enjoy today, the simple things, because those good old days are today. Number 21, whenever you hug someone, make sure they are the one to let go first. Again, great words of advice, not necessarily a huge hugger, but certainly understand the importance of this and what the meaning of this is. I'm sure there are those of you out there who can provide a lot more meaningful inspiration on what this is. So reach out to me on Twitter, say, hey, that's what this means, or here's a great story of that exemplifies that. I'd love to hear that. Number 22, if it's raining on a warm summer evening, go outside and dance in it. A lot of these are interconnected. They all stand to enjoy the simple things. So much of our society, our American society, is focused on monetary things, capitalism, which I'm a huge fan of. It obviously has its downfalls, but by far the best system out there. But if it's raining on a warm summer evening, go outside and dance it. Don't get so caught up or take yourself too seriously. Enjoy the simple things, because then you'll be able to appreciate everything else. And one of my favorite biblical passages is godliness with contentment is great gain. Godliness with contentment is great gain. And in such a materialistic society, we often forget that, but it is very comforting and reassuring. Hard to put into application, but an important one to work towards. Number 23, taking no risk is the biggest risk you can take. Regret from inaction is always more painful than regret from action. We've talked about this on this podcast so much. This is one of the ones that's at the top of my list. I've talked about there's four types of people: those who are born to be entrepreneurs and they take a risk and realize they're an entrepreneur; those who are born to be entrepreneurs but they never try it. They don't take that risk. This one speaks directly to them. That's always the category that I fear the most for everyone. If you're born an entrepreneur but you never try, you never figure that out because you don't take the risk. That's what this one is talking about. Taking no risk is the biggest risk you can take. Regret from inaction is always more painful than regret from action. The other two categories, those who aren't born to be entrepreneurs, and they recognize that, and so they do something else. And then those who aren't born to be entrepreneurs, but they take the risk and they fail and they find out, you know what, this isn't for me. We always think about taking that plunge. And we've talked about if you're in a corporate world and you're just miserable, taking that risk. Just remember, not taking any risk, taking inaction, is a huge risk in and of itself. And we often forget that. This is a great reminder of that. Number 24, it doesn't have to be perfect for it to be wonderful. Absolutely true. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite sayings that I tell all entrepreneurs: perfection is the destruction of success. That additional 1, 2, 3% is not worth the additional effort. Again, generalizing here, it doesn't have to be perfect for it to be wonderful. It doesn't have to be perfect in a business world for you to go out there. If you're starting a new business or you have an idea to bring something to market, get the minimum viable product. That's a very common term. It's not going to be perfect, but you can test the market and see what the opportunity for that particular good or service is. Number 25, when in doubt, love. We can always use more love. Very, very biblical. I think the secular world often perverts this or completely misconstrues this. But faith, hope, love, the greatest of these is love. Very biblical. And we could have a whole podcast on what that love should be and what it means. Number 26, looking presentable is a matter of self respect. I could have a whole podcast on this one itself. How people present themselves in this day and age. And I'm not talking about judging people just because of how they look, but what people are comfortable wearing or looking like today is so dramatically different than what would have been acceptable even 10, 15 years ago, let alone 30, 40 years ago. Remember, you only have the one opportunity to make a good first impression. Do you really want to have people see you looking like that? And I'm not going to describe that because we all know what that can mean. Looking presentable is a matter of self respect. It's how much you respect yourself, whether how modest you are, how you dress and act. It's a matter of self-respect. Respect yourself, be presentable. Number 27, when you're feeling down, smile at yourself in the mirror for a full minute. I've practiced this before. We've talked about just being human. There are highs and lows. There's a lot of volatility. You add on the top of that being an entrepreneur or a business owner, the highs are higher and the lows are lower. And our natural body rhythms, some days you're just feeling down. You can't necessarily describe it, but that's just what your body's telling you. Do yourself a favor, practice this. Look at the mirror, smile at yourself for a full minute. It can change the whole outlook of your day. I've practiced this one. It's true. Don't take smiling for granted. Number 28, travel as much as you can. Collect one token from every trip to remember it by. I love this one because traveling, I haven't done a lot of it, but I've done a reasonable amount. I know people have done far more. I know people that done a lot less. Travel is an excellent opportunity to experience other cultures, learn from other individuals. But I recognize not everybody has the benefit to traveling across the world, but even traveling to a different city, traveling from state to state, you can learn so much. Relish those opportunities and take those chances as much as you can. And on top of meeting other humans and getting to interact with other people, God's creation across this world is absolutely breathless. When you get the chance to look at it and experience it, do so. 29, if there's something bothering you, ask yourself whether it will matter in 1 month. If not, let it go right now. This one is again in the top 5 of my list. In this day and age, and I've talked about this, I believe our technology has made us far more emotional beings, far more sentient. And that can be a very good thing and it can be a very bad thing. I think it's a very bad thing when we bring emotion into situations where it needs to be fact-based decisions. And we've done that, unfortunately, in so many areas throughout society. It's become very prevalent to make all decisions using emotion, which can result in a lot of problems. But in this scenario, uh, when, if you are using emotion, and there are a lot of things in business that can be emotional or seem like they're emotional, I love this one because it puts things into perspective. And I think that's a common theme throughout all 40 of these. People that have lived 90 years on this earth, they give us a lot of good perspective, especially for those of us who are younger and less mature and haven't experienced as much. Think about it. Will this matter in 1 month? If it won't, let it go. Don't let it stress you out. I want to use this one more because I think this is a really good tool to think about. Okay, I'm freaking out about this today. And as a business owner, there's fires everywhere. They're always coming up every day. And this is a good one to figure out which fires matter and which fires don't. And that's a huge part of being a business owner and an entrepreneur. Number 30, stop trying to change people who don't want to be changed. Oh, so many of these are fantastic. This one, whether it's employees or business partners, sometimes it just won't work. Sometimes people are who they are, and as much as you want them to be different, if they don't want to change, they're not going to change. And sometimes that's fine. I acknowledge this with various business partners in the past, things that would drive me crazy and I'd like them to be different. And then I realized, you know what? This is just who they are. With the good comes the bad. We all have good, we all have bad. And so if this person, I'm talking specifically in this situation, a business partner can be a personal relationship. It can be whether it's a romantic relationship or a friendship or a colleague or employee. Look at the good, look at the bad. If they're going to have, we all have these little quirks, and sometimes we can't change it, or sometimes there's things we don't want to change. If that's the reality, you have to make a judgment call or say, you know what, I can accept those. This person is important enough to me, where what they provide is fantastic, whether it's, again, a friendship, a romantic relationship, a business relationship. But if it's something that's crucial and it needs to be changed and they don't want to be changed, that might be a good indicator. It's time to cut ties and move on. Number 31, you may win the argument, but if you lose the friend, what was the point? This is again very biblical. Goes to there's nothing sharper than the tongue is. There's nothing. I don't remember what is it. The tongue is sharper than any two-edged sword. We can do a lot of damage with our tongue. And this one, you can win the argument. Is it really worth losing the friend? And just be mindful of how you use your tongue, what you let come across, because words can often be the most hurtful thing there is. And even if you win and you lose the friend, what is the point? And again, that goes to the biblical reference of uh, the tongue is sharper than every two-edged sword. So think before you speak. We've all made mistakes. We've all said things we wish we can take back. The more I think about that, the more I have more control over what I say. I think that comes with age, wisdom, as experience, as this points out. Always something to work towards and keep in mind. Number 32, stubborn pride is the downfall of many men and women. Learn to forget the slight hurts and avoid grudges. This is in the top 5 for me. I think those who are the most successful entrepreneurs, secularly speaking, understand that saying sorry and saying I'm wrong is okay. We're human, we make mistakes. And then giving other individuals the opportunity or the forgiveness to let them say I'm wrong or I'm sorry. This goes to the second part, learn to forget the slight hurts and avoid grudges. Holding grudges only destroys you, not the other person. Let go. Forgiveness is huge. Saying you're wrong when you're wrong. It's so hard for us to do. And think about how many, as they say, it's not the crime, it's the cover up. How many politicians do we know? And I'm not going to bring any politician up, that all they had to do was say, I was wrong. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. That's how simple it was. But pride, the first part of this advice, pride is the downfall of many men and women. Don't let that happen to you. And we all have done it. We all will continue to do it. And this is one I continue to work on. Just saying you're wrong, it's not that hard, but we often let our ego and pride get in the way. And I think it'll be something that we continually as humans struggle throughout our lives. But the more you can think of it, be conscientious of it, or be conscious of it, the more you can ensure that you don't let your pride and your ego get in the way of incredible relationships, business success, etc. And the same thing goes for grudges. Number 33, do one thing that challenges your mind every single day, a crossword puzzle, math problem, anything. Daily exercise will keep your mind sharp for the long haul. Have you ever looked at the American political system and asked yourself, how come the majority of these people are all over 70 or 80 or 90? You know what I find interesting? We do need, I'm always struggle with this because those who are more experienced, typically you would think are wiser in our political atmosphere that we live in the United States. I'm not sure if that's true now, but they never die. They keep going on. Why? They keep their minds active. They're up on Capitol Hill. They're reading through bills. I love to bring that example up because it's so true. Do the same thing for you. Don't let yourself atrophy after you retire. If you're in a business and you're wildly successful, do something that expands your brain, exercises your brain, because I'm just a big believer that keeps you a lot younger, keeps your mind healthy. I think all the statistics and the data and the science show that. So don't fall in the trap of never learning anything new. I love learning. Sometimes I get caught up in the daily excesses of business and I forget, you know what? I didn't learn anything last month. I need to read a book. I need to talk to another guest on the podcast. I need to experience something different. I need to try something I've never done, playing chess, which I've done in the past few months. And boy, does that hurt my brain. But I can just feel the energy or health being restored to my mental facilities, which seem to be going downhill quickly just by challenging it with something new. Do the same thing. 34, if something isn't working and your gut tells you to try harder, first ask whether there's just an easier way to do it. I love this one because oftentimes we always want to take the easiest route, but sometimes we don't. We say, well, this is how it's always been done, so this is how we're going to do it. Well, perhaps there's an easier way. Perhaps you don't have to paddle upstream without a paddle, or you don't have to row upstream without an oar. Is there an easier way to do it? And the best organizations, and this goes personally and professionally, but again, most of this podcast is focused around the professional side of things. So many organizations, the ones that are the best, have the flexibility, have the culture that allow people to say, We've been doing this a long time, but it seems really hard and complicated. Is there an easier way? Always ask yourself systems, processes, strategies, goals. Is there an easier way to accomplish what we're trying to do? And if you can remember that and reflect on that every quarter, every half a year, I think you'll see that there's a huge amount of benefit to do that. And I think we've seen that with many organizations that have that type of dynamic culture. Do that exact thing, ask that question. Number 35, allow your kids to fail. You will hate it, but it's so important. This goes for kids, employees, friends. I was just having this conversation with someone the other day. You have a friend in your life, and you can see where things are going, and you know it's going to lead to failure, and it's hard to watch, but we need to let, in this case, kids fail. You need to let yourself fail. It's not easy to watch, but it's so important. If you're always there to pick someone up and they never get the chance to fail, you're doing them a huge disservice. Look at some of the most unhappy individuals that are out there, and it's often the wealthiest second, third, fourth generation. And I'm talking from a monetary perspective, but they have so much money and they've never really failed. And oftentimes, what takes people falling flat on their face is financially speaking, where they really have to figure things out. And those people, and I'm again generalizing here, but think about the people in your life, people or kids that have been given everything and they've never failed, or they failed a ton and they have daddy to bail them out. It's not a very fulfilling life. So, again, this is very biblical. He that spares the rod spoils the child. This goes to that exact point. And just remember that our society tends to be falling away from this. Challenges and struggles for our kids are so important. Again, this is just as relevant for employees or friends. But remember, failing is good. Don't always provide that trampoline, because sometimes, not sometimes, we all need to fail to take to the next step or to achieve success. Number 36, there's nothing wrong with shedding old relationships as you grow and change. This is absolutely true. As you grow, you change, other people change, and what might have worked 5 years ago, or the relationships that were right 5 or 10 years ago, maybe aren't right now. Um, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think people are often afraid to let go of relationships. Again, I've said this a lot, but this can be personal relationships, this can be friendships. Uh, Sometimes people change. You change, they change, and grow and let some relationships are meant to move on. There's nothing wrong with that. Number 37, no amount of money is ever worth trading for your peace of mind. Boy, this one is so good. And in this day and age, when morals are often thrown away for the dollar, for the almighty quote unquote dollar, just remember every night you have to look yourself in the eye, in the mirror, and is that extra dollar, is that conflict, or is that sacrifice of your moral compass worth your peace of mind? No, it's not. Uh, it's just not worth it. Being able to sleep and being able to be honest with yourself and look yourself in the eye and having that peace of mind, there isn't any amount of money that's worth that. So many times in business, when you're going to be presented with chances to just real morally challenging opportunities and it's easy to make excuses, don't do it. Don't let it happen. Because when I've made mistakes, I've sacrificed peace of mind, because we're all human and we've done it. And I found it's never worth it. And I think that's something all of us struggle, whether not just in business, but in every facet of life. Money isn't worth it. It's just not worth it. So don't trade your peace of mind, sacrifice your moral compass for an extra dollar. It'll only make things a lot harder. Number 38, if your kids want to dance in line at the store, join them. This is a lighthearted one. Don't take yourself too seriously. Life's too short. Enjoy the moment. We've had a lot of them that are similar to that. 39, smile and say good morning to strangers on the street. I love this one. I'm a very social individual. I've talked about this. I'm a type A personality. I'm an extrovert rather. I get my energy. I refill my gas tank by talking to other people, friends, strangers. This one is easy for me. I recognize for introverts this is a lot harder, but remember, we're all humans, whether we know each other or we're strangers or not. Smile, say good morning. There's no reason not to. There's no reason not to. Number 40, and the last one, laugh loudly and unapologetically whenever you feel like it. A great one to end on, a very lighthearted note. Again, focusing on simple moments. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Don't take yourself too seriously. Laugh loudly and unapologetically whenever you feel like it. It's so easy for us as entrepreneurs or business owners, and it doesn't even matter if you own a business or not, or if you're in the corporate world. There's a lot of stress out there, but we create a lot of stress for ourselves because we forget to realize what's really important, and we don't take the time to relieve stress, just sit back, laugh with our friends and family, focus on the things that are important, faith in God being the number one thing, and we just forget that. Don't. And we all do. I'm as guilty as anybody. I said that about a lot of these things because it's true, but these are all great reminders. And that's the last one from this list. And so many of these have a lot of meaning to me because of the experiences in my life, personally, professionally. I'm sure they do for you. We all can take different meaning from these, or we can relate to different examples. I've learned a lot of these the hard way because when we got into business, young, naive, uh, boisterous, overconfident. And so I've learned through that and my mentors, whenever you have the chance to listen to people, whether you know them or not, one of my favorite questions that I love to ask people my elder 70s, 80s, what's the most important? I just love sitting there and learning from them and listening because I get so much wisdom from that, and it makes a lot of things easier. And so many people only give other people the time of day when there's a monetary gain. What a mistake. The best advice I've ever gotten are not because I've ever gotten any monetary gain. It's because they gave me a shred of wisdom that I could only have ever gotten either through failing myself or experience, or just listening, opening my ears and listen to other people so I can learn from their mistakes. I encourage you to do the same. And it doesn't matter whether you're 90 years old, talk to someone who's 110 years old. I know there's not a lot of people out there, but talk to other friends that are 90. This is so applicable no matter where you are, what stage of life you are, what stage of your business you're in. Never stop respecting the wisdom and experience of our seniors and our elders because there's so much we can learn. And for all of those who are relatively youthful, we might think we know everything in this world and we might think we've got it figured out. We're fools if we do. And the most wisdom and experience that I've appreciated or gained from is just listening to those far more experienced and wiser than we are. I hope you enjoyed this episode. This is a little bit different than what we typically do, but this was so meaningful, and I think it's so important to step away from talking about business strategies and everything else. Take a step back and talk to those. And this is so relevant in business. Talk to those who've experienced many years of life. And so many of these things apply to directly in business. But I think personally, professionally, these can all be profound and helpful. If there's things that had particular meanings to you or something that you'd like to add to this, perhaps you're 80 or 90 years old and you said, hey, I thought those were fantastic. There's another one that I think is really important to add. Reach out to me. The website, andrewhollandpodcast.com. Shoot me an email. Follow me on Twitter, @HollandPodcast. It's the same on Twitter or on Threads. Shoot me a tweet. Love to hear your thoughts on this and respond to it. Share with my listeners if you have something to add or a powerful story that one of these particularly epitomizes. That's what this is for. This is the support group that we're trying to grow and be a part of every single week for the highs of business, for the lows of business, and everything in between. Thank you so much for joining us this week. You have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk again next Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the Andrew Holland Podcast. Be sure to visit our website, theandrewhollandpodcast.com, for additional content on business, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Andrew Holland Podcast, to get notifications when new podcasts have been released. And lastly, follow us on Twitter, @Holland Podcast. That's @Holland Podcast for all the conversations we're having outside the podcast. Thanks again so much for joining us this week. Have a great day, and we'll talk again next week.